No one dared speak to the Mafia boss's father, until the waitress whispered one Italian word. They said his silence was more dangerous than a loaded gun. Baek Do-hyun, the ruthless syndicate king who built an empire on blood and unyielding fear. In the city's most exclusive neon-lit lounge, not even the rival bosses dared to look him in the eye, until a curvy, beautiful waitress, with a dark secret, broke the golden rule. She leaned in, exhaled, and whispered one single forbidden word that didn't just stop the dinner. It stopped the world, brought his billionaire dynasty to its knees, and unlocked a 50-year-old mafia war that was never supposed to wake up. What did she say to him? And why did the most feared man in the city suddenly look at her like he recognized her? Before we reveal the shocking truth, tell me in the comments down below, what city or country are you watching this from right now? Drop your flag, hit that like button, share this video with a friend who loves an intense twist, and subscribe so you never miss a single chapter. Let's find out exactly what happened. The rain washed over the neon-lit streets of Manhattan, casting long, dark shadows against the heavy glass windows of the exclusive lounge. Inside, Baek Do-hyun sat in the corner booth, surrounded by men in dark suits who didn't dare breathe too loudly. He was the undisputed king of the city's underground, a man whose word could ruin a dynasty, yet his dark eyes were fixed on the far side of the room. There, arranging glasses at the bar, stood Maya, a woman whose soft, breathtaking curves and radiant grace completely defied the cold, dangerous atmosphere of the club. Do-hyun felt a sudden, heavy thud in his chest, a strange and powerful territorial instinct tightening its grip on him the moment he saw her. Later that night, the noise in the club grew louder as a wealthy, arrogant patron staggered toward the bar, leaning entirely too close to Maya. Do-hyun watched from the shadows, his jaw tightening as the man reached out to grab her wrist, ignoring her polite attempts to step back. The air in the room turned freezing cold as Do-hyun stood up, his massive, imposing frame radiating a silent, lethal promise that instantly stopped the music. He walked over, his boots striking the floor with absolute authority, and placed a heavy, scarred hand over the patron's arm, his eyes locked on Maya's wide, trembling eyes. The man quickly let go and fled into the night, leaving Maya breathless, her heart hammering against her ribs as she looked up at the dangerous billionaire who had just saved her. The next day, Maya arrived at work to find the lounge completely empty except for Do-hyun, who was sitting quietly at a central table. A beautifully tailored velvet coat and a box of expensive pastries sat on the chair across from him, waiting. He didn't say a word as she approached, but his dark, intense gaze followed her every movement, filled with a quiet, burning possessiveness that made her skin tingle. Maya tried to maintain her distance, her voice trembling slightly as she told him she couldn't accept such expensive gifts from a customer. Do-hyun simply leaned forward, his low, deep voice vibrating through the quiet room as he told her that she belonged in silk, not standard uniforms, and that he would ensure she never had to worry about safety again. A few days later, a rival crew attempted to spark a turf war by causing trouble right outside the lounge doors, unaware that Do-hyun was inside watching over Maya. The moment a stray brick shattered the front window, Do-hyun shielded Maya's body with his own, pulling her tight against his broad, muscular chest as the glass rained down around them. She could feel the rapid, powerful beat of his heart and the sheer heat radiating from his skin, realizing he was entirely focused on keeping her safe from harm. Once his men secured the perimeter, Do-hyun gently cupped her face, his eyes searching hers for any sign of injury, with a fierce, desperate intensity that left them both completely breathless. By the end of the week, Maya found herself thinking about the mysterious, dangerous man constantly, caught between her fear of his world and the undeniable, slow-burn attraction drawing her in. Every time she turned around, he was there in the shadows, a silent protector who bought out the restaurant just to ensure she could work her shift in absolute peace. When she finally confronted him near the back exit, demanding to know why a powerful syndicate boss was wasting his time on a simple waitress, Do-hyun stepped close, trapping her against the wall. His breath hitched as he looked down at her lips, his voice dropping to a raw, possessive whisper. telling her that he had tried to stay away, but her light was the only thing keeping his dark world from collapsing entirely. That evening, the tension between them reached a breaking point when an old acquaintance of Maya's showed up at the club, attempting to flirt with her and ask her out on a date. Do-hyun, watching from the VIP balcony, felt a wave of blinding jealousy rip through his chest, his glass cracking slightly under the pressure of his grip. He descended the stairs like a predator tracking prey, stepping directly between Maya and the man, his cold glare forcing the civilian to retreat without a single word being exchanged. Maya turned on Do-hyun, her eyes flashing with anger as she accused him of trying to control her life, her breath coming in short, frustrated gasps that only drew his gaze down to her soft, heaving chest. Later that night, a violent thunderstorm rolled over the city, trapping Maya inside the club long after closing time, with the power completely knocked out. Do-hyun appeared from the darkness, carrying a soft woolen blanket, his usual cold demeanor melting away into something raw, vulnerable, and deeply emotional as he wrapped it around her shoulders. As the lightning flashed, revealing the deep, addictive longing in his eyes, Maya stopped resisting, reaching out to touch the sharp line of his jaw. The touch broke his last shred of restraint, and he pulled her into a fierce, breathless embrace, his lips finding hers in a slow, deeply emotional kiss that sealed their fates in the quiet dark. The storm raged outside, but inside the pitch-black club, the silence between them was thick, electric, and dangerous. Maya woke up on the leather sofa with a sharp gasp, the heavy wool blanket slipping from her shoulders as her eyes desperately adjusted to the dim shadows. She was alone, the space beside her empty, and a crushing sense of panic instantly squeezed her throat. Had it all been a mistake, a cruel game played by a man who ruled the city with a snap of his fingers? She scrambled to her feet, her boots clicking against the cold hardwood, terrified that he had already abandoned her to face the wolves of his world completely unprotected. A few minutes later, she ran out into the alleyway behind the lounge, the heavy rain instantly soaking through her thin clothes as she looked for any sign of him. Through the downpour, she spotted his sleek, matte black sedan idling at the curb, its headlights cutting through the dark like razor blades. Do-hyun was leaning against the frame, a glowing cigarette between his lips, his dark eyes watching her panic with a raw, fierce possessiveness that made the breath catch in her throat. He didn't say a word as he stepped forward, his massive frame instantly blocking the freezing wind, wrapping his heavy cashmere coat around her trembling, curvy frame before pulling her tightly against his chest. The following morning, Maya woke up inside a massive, sunlit penthouse overlooking the city, the luxury around her feeling completely alien compared to her tiny queen's apartment. Silk sheets covered her skin, and on the vanity sat an array of tailored designer clothes, all perfectly measured to fit her soft curves. Do-hyun entered the room holding a tray of warm, traditional food, his intense gaze locking onto hers with a quiet, undeniable devotion that made her heart race. She demanded to know why he had brought her here, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and addictive longing. Do-hyun simply knelt by the bed, his deep voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, telling her that the streets were no longer safe for her because his enemies had seen her face. By the end of the week, the underlying danger of his world slammed into their reality when a threatening package arrived at the penthouse gates. Do-hyun's security team intercepted a manila folder filled with surveillance photos of Maya, tracking her every movement from the lounge to her mother's hospital. Do-hyun's face turned into a mask of pure, lethal fury as he stared at the images, his knuckles turning white as he crushed the paper in his fist. He ordered a complete lockdown of the estate, his possessive instincts flaring to an all-time high as he vowed to eliminate whoever dared to threaten the woman he had claimed as his own. That evening, the tension between them flared again when Do-hyun's top lieutenant arrived to deliver a security briefing, his eyes lingering just a second too long on Maya's beautiful form. Do-hyun noticed the glance instantly, a wave of dark, suffocating jealousy rolling off his shoulders as he stepped directly into the lieutenant's line of sight. His voice was low, laced with a quiet promise of violence, as he dismissed the man and warned him never to look at what belonged to the boss again. Maya confronted Do-hyun the moment they were alone, frustrated by his suffocating protection. But he merely gripped her waist, pulling her flush against his solid chest, his breath hot against her neck, as he told her he would burn the entire city to the ground before letting another man touch her. A few days later, a massive corporate gala was held downtown, a public front for the syndicate, where Do-hyun was expected to show his face to the rival bosses. Against his better judgment, he brought Maya as his date, dressing her in a breathtaking emerald silk gown that accentuated every single one of her stunning curves. The moment they entered the grand ballroom, a dead silence washed over the crowd of high society criminals, everyone whispering about the mysterious woman on the arm of the city's most feared king. Do-hyun kept his hand firmly on the small of her back, his dark eyes scanning the room like a predator, silently warning every titan of industry and mafia captain that she was entirely off-limits. Later that night, during the height of the gala, a smooth, wealthy rival named Kang Min-ho approached their table while Do-hyun was briefly pulled away for a security update. Min-ho poured Maya a glass of champagne, leaning in close and whispering a sleazy compliment about how a beautiful woman like her shouldn't be trapped in Do-hyun's cold, violent shadow. Maya stepped back, her heart hammering, but before she could speak, a heavy, scarred hand clamped down on Min-ho's shoulder with bone-crushing force. Do-hyun had returned, his face a terrifying mask of absolute rage, his eyes burning with a possessive madness that promised a brutal end if Min-ho didn't vanish from their sight immediately. The next morning, the aftermath of the gala left a suffocating silence hanging over the penthouse as the true scale of the danger began to reveal itself. Maya stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her hands trembling as she read a breaking news report detailing a sudden, massive cyber attack on Do-hyun's shipping empire. It wasn't just corporate sabotage. It was a direct declaration of war from a coalition of rival families who wanted to bleed him dry. Do-hyun strode into the room, his tie undone and his expression dark with calculated fury, his eyes instantly tracking the pale look on her face. He didn't care about the billions lost in the market, but the moment he noticed her distress, his possessive focus shifted entirely to her, pulling her into his arms to shield her from the chaos. Later that afternoon, a sudden medical emergency shattered whatever peace they had left when Maya received a frantic call from the clinic in Ohio. Her mother's condition had taken a devastating turn, and the specialized treatments keeping her alive were suddenly blocked by a mysterious corporate entity linked to Do-hyun's enemies. Maya broke down, the weight of the manipulation and the sheer terror of losing her mother causing her to sob against his chest. Do-hyun's jaw tightened into a hard line, a terrifyingly calm resolve washing over him as he gathered her into his embrace. He immediately dialed his private line, ordering his personal medical team and a private transport to airlift her mother to the top facility in Manhattan, proving he would spare no expense to protect everything she loved. By the end of the week, the financial district was buzzing with rumors of the syndicate's vulnerability, but Do-hyun remained entirely focused on Maya's safety inside the fortified estate. He spent hours watching over her while she rested, sitting silently in the shadows of the bedroom, his gaze filled with an addictive, intense longing that he could no longer hide. Every meal served to her was personally inspected by him, and he routinely surprised her with small tokens of devotion, antique books, soft silks, and her favorite flowers brought in from across the country. Maya found her resistance crumbling under the weight of his absolute loyalty, realizing that behind the feared public persona was a man who worshipped the very ground she walked on. That evening, an unexpected ambush caught them off guard during a routine security transfer near the private docks. A group of masked men armed with heavy weapons emerged from the fog, opening fire on their vehicle in a desperate attempt to kidnap Maya and force Do-hyun into submission. Do-hyun reacted instantly, throwing his large frame over her curvy body, absorbing the shock of the shattered glass as his drivers accelerated through the blockade. He pulled his weapon, his dark eyes burning with a lethal, protective madness as he returned fire, neutralizing the threat with absolute precision. Holding a breathless, terrified Maya tight against his pounding heart, he whispered a dark vow into her hair, promising to hunt down every single person responsible for putting her in harm's way. A few days later, a sharp misunderstanding threatened to tear them apart when Maya discovered an old ledger containing names of local politicians and businesses Do-hyun allegedly controlled. Fear gripped her heart as she realized just how deep his dark roots ran, making her question if she was just another piece on his corporate chessboard. When Do-hyun found her packing her bags in the library, his usual composed demeanor completely fractured, replaced by a raw, desperate panic. He slammed the door shut, trapping her between his muscular frame and the wood, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps as he begged her to understand that his empire was a shield to keep them alive, not a cage to trap her. Later that night, the emotional breakdown led to a breakthrough as the raw vulnerability between them exploded into an undeniable, breathless passion. Maya looked into his dark, watery eyes and saw a profound fear of loss that mirrored her own, her anger melting away into pure, unadulterated longing. She reached up, her fingers tracing the tense line of his jaw before pulling him down into a slow, deeply emotional kiss that banished the cold reality of their dangerous world. Do-hyun groaned, his possessive hands gripping her waist as he carried her to the silk-covered bed, their breathless whispers and intense closeness filling the room as the scene faded to black, bound by a desire that defied the darkness outside. The following morning, the crushing weight of reality returned, leaving Maya staring at the empty space beside her with a sudden, overwhelming fear of abandonment. She convinced herself that a powerful syndicate boss could never truly commit to someone like her, fearing his intense possessiveness would eventually turn into regret or rejection. Driven by insecurity, she quietly dressed in her old clothes and slipped out of the penthouse before the sun fully rose, leaving no note behind. When Do-hyun returned to find her gone, a cold, predatory fury woke up inside him, and he mobilized his entire security detail within seconds, vowing to search every square inch of the city until he brought his woman back home. By the end of the day, a brutal storm rolled over Manhattan, matching the dark fury raging inside Do-hyun's chest as he personally led the hunt through the rain-slicked streets. He tracked her to a small, forgotten diner on the edge of Queens, finding her sitting alone in a corner booth, shivering and looking incredibly small. The bell above the door chimed loudly as Do-hyun strode in, his massive frame soaking wet and his eyes burning with an intense, possessive anger that made the diner staff instantly freeze. He walked straight to her table, slamming his hands onto the laminate surface, his voice dropping to a raw, breathless rumble as he demanded to know why she thought she could ever run away from the man who had given her his soul. Later that night, back inside the safety of the penthouse, the confrontation turned into a deep, emotional confession that shattered the last of Maya's defenses. She cried out, her voice trembling with years of buried trauma, as she admitted her terror of being viewed as just a temporary distraction or a weakness his enemies could exploit. Do-hyun didn't yell. Instead, he stepped close, pulling her curvy, trembling body tightly against his broad chest, his own hands shaking with the rare vulnerability of a king begging for his queen. He looked directly into her eyes, swearing on his life that she was his entire future, and that he would rather tear down his entire empire, piece by piece, than spend a single day without her by his side. The following morning, the fragile peace they had built was completely shattered when a coordinated mafia attack hit the lower levels of Do-hyun's corporate tower. A rival syndicate captain, seeking to exploit the rumors of Do-hyun's distraction, initiated a hostile takeover by taking several board members hostage and demanding full control of the shipping ports. Do-hyun received the emergency alert while sitting at the breakfast table with Maya, his face instantly turning into a cold, lethal mask of calculated vengeance. He didn't want to leave her side, but the high stakes of the situation meant he had to end the threat permanently to guarantee her safety, kissing her forehead with a quiet, protective intensity before heading out into the war zone. A few days later, while Do-hyun was orchestrating the counteroffensive from his secure base, a traitor within his own security team leaked the location of Maya's mother's medical facility. A rival strike team infiltrated the specialized hospital wing, cutting the power and holding the clinic hostage in a desperate bid to force Do-hyun into a fatal trap. The moment the news reached the syndicate base, Do-hyun's eyes flashed with a terrifying, murderous possessiveness that sent a chill down his lieutenant's spines. He didn't hesitate for a single second, mobilizing his elite vanguard and vowing to burn the entire rival faction to ash, personally leading the breach into the hospital to reclaim his woman and her family from the jaws of danger. That evening, the hospital corridors became a battleground of steel and tactical precision as Do-hyun's forces systematically neutralized the infiltrators. Inside the intensive care unit, Maya shielded her mother's bed, her heart hammering against her ribs as the sound of gunfire echoed through the heavy doors. The lock clicked open, and Maya braced for the worst, only for Do-hyun to stride through the dust, his suit splattered with concrete and his weapon drawn. The sheer relief on his face when he saw her uninjured was palpable. He dropped his gear, rushing forward to cup her face in his large, scarred hands, kissing her with a fierce, breathless hunger that proved no force on earth could ever keep them apart. By the end of the week, the failed hit backfired spectacularly on the rival families, triggering a massive, systematic purge of every hidden element that had threatened Do-hyun's rule. He spent every waking hour rewriting the security protocols of the city, using his immense corporate and underground power to blackball and bankrupt every single individual who had a hand in the conspiracy. Yet, despite the chaos of running a multi-billion-dollar empire, he remained entirely devoted to Maya, setting up a luxury medical suite directly inside the estate so her mother could receive world-class care under his personal surveillance. Maya watched his tireless devotion from the shadows, her heart swelling with an addictive, slow-burn love, as she finally accepted that his intensity was her ultimate sanctuary. A few days later, with the immediate threats neutralized, Do-hyun brought Maya to the grand boardroom on the 50th floor of the Blackwood Tower, a glass cage suspended in the clouds. The room was filled with the city's remaining financial elite and syndicate captains, all waiting in dead silence for the king's next decree. Do-hyun walked to the head of the obsidian table, but instead of taking his seat, he pulled out the chair beside him, gently guiding Maya to sit in the position of highest authority. He looked down at the assembled titans, his deep, rumbling voice echoing through the acoustics of the room as he officially introduced her not as a guest, but as the co-owner and absolute ruler of everything he had built. The morning sun broke through the heavy clouds, casting a warm, golden glow over the manicured lawns and stone fortresses of the sprawling Blackwood estate. Inside the master suite, Maya woke up to the gentle hum of the city in the distance, finding Do-hyun already awake, sitting on the edge of the silk-lined bed and looking down at her with an expression of pure, unadulterated devotion. The dark, chaotic world that had threatened to tear them apart for the past few months felt miles away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace and absolute security. Do-hyun leaned down, his large, scarred hand gently cradling her jawline as he pressed a soft, lingering kiss to her lips, silently reaffirming the silent vow he had made to spend the rest of his life keeping her safe from the shadows of the underground. Maya smiled against his lips, her hands trailing up his broad, muscular shoulders, finally resting in the warmth of his embrace without a single ounce of fear or hesitation left in her heart. Later that afternoon, a private family gathering was held on the estate's massive stone terrace overlooking the glistening waters of the Long Island Sound to celebrate a miraculous milestone that once seemed entirely impossible. Maya's mother, looking vibrant, healthy, and full of life after her successful, world-class medical treatments in Manhattan, sat smiling in a plush armchair, watching the couple interact from across the patio. Do-hyun stood by Maya's side near the stone railing, his massive frame completely relaxed for the first time since they met, yet his arm remained wrapped tightly around her waist, his possessive gaze never leaving her beautiful, radiant form for more than a few seconds. The titans of industry and the remnants of the rival syndicates had been completely neutralized by his strategic brilliance, leaving behind a clean, secure corporate empire that was now built on a foundation of absolute loyalty and love rather than blood and fear. Maya looked up at him, her heart swelling with an addictive, profound happiness as she realized that this terrifying, powerful man had successfully rewritten her entire destiny just to give her a peaceful life. By the end of the month, the ultimate resolution to their dangerous, high-stakes journey arrived during a quiet, rainy evening inside the estate's grand, leather-scented library. Do-hyun led Maya to the center of the room, near the roaring fireplace, where a small, unmarked velvet box sat resting on the polished surface of the heavy mahogany table. He didn't offer her another corporate contract, a tactical security arrangement, or a bank account filled with millions. Instead, the most feared king of the city's underground slowly dropped to one knee before his queen, his deep, rumbling voice trembling with a rare, raw emotion as he asked her to officially take his name and become his wife. Tears of pure joy pricked Maya's eyes as she looked down at him, her resistance completely dissolving into an unshakable, permanent devotion to the man who had figuratively burned down the world just to keep her by his side. She whispered her acceptance into the quiet room, and Do-hyun slid the diamond ring onto her finger before standing up to pull her curvy body flush against his chest, holding her so tightly it felt as though he would never let her go. The following year, the grand ballroom of the estate was completely transformed, filled with thousands of white roses, flickering candles, and soft classical music for a wedding celebration that proved true love had completely conquered trauma, danger, and fear. Maya stood before the full-length mirror in a separate bridal suite, wearing a breathtaking custom lace wedding gown that beautifully accentuated her soft curves, a radiant, peaceful smile gracing her lips as she adjusted her veil. The heavy oak doors clicked open, and Do-hyun entered the room, looking incredibly handsome and powerful in a tailored black tuxedo, his sharp, dark eyes instantly turning watery the moment he caught sight of his beautiful bride. He walked over with slow, deliberate steps, his boots striking the floor with his usual authority, but his hands were incredibly gentle as he wrapped his arms around her from behind. He lowered his gaze, his large hands resting softly over her stomach, where an unmistakable, beautiful curve signaled the upcoming arrival of their first child, a perfect, living symbol of the new, peaceful legacy they were building together out of the ashes of their past. They said his silence was more dangerous than a loaded gun, but in the end, it was his fierce, unwavering loyalty and protective madness that saved an empire and claimed a queen. Baek Do-hyun didn't just find a partner to occupy his empty penthouse. He found his soul, proving to the entire city that even the darkest, most violent world can be completely transformed when you find a love worth fighting for. Now that we've reached the beautiful, romantic end of this dangerous journey, I have a quick question for you, besties. You're still here listening to my voice, which means this story touched your heart and kept you on the edge of your seat until the very last sentence, right? So, why haven't you hit that like button yet? Don't leave our beautiful community hanging after everything we've been through together over these 5 chapters. Go ahead and guilt trip yourself into doing the right thing. Drop a comment down below to let us know you made it to the very end of the line. Share this video with a friend who needs a reminder that true loyalty still exists. And definitely subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss our next addictive chapter. See you in the next story, besties.